Thanks for listening to the Rock Guitar Confidential podcast with Scott and Ryan. Today's episode. Does a poor carpenter blame his tools? Well, not always. Your gear might suck. If you care to find out why, stay tuned.
Santa Cruz, which is also a very awesome rock and roll band from Europe.
That's right. That was on Underrated Bands Part 1, The Phantom Menace.
Exactly. And then we did the Attack of the Bands on a podcast just recently, too.
Oh, Attack of the Bands. That's a good
two.
one.
All right.
Man.
Hey, guys. Welcome to the Rock Guitar Confidential podcast with Ryan and Scott. I am Scott, and that is...
I'm Ryan Bowe. How you doing?
Nice to have you with us. And today's topic is going to be the subjectivity of gear. It actually sounds almost like a Jane Austen book or something.
Kind of.
The subjectivity of gear.
Thank you for tuning into NPR for another episode of...
In this new broadcast, we're going to talk about the subjectivity of gear and how it affects people in the actual music world. And this is being sponsored by the Leafling tea brand, which is very good tea biscuits to go with that. And no, sorry. That was my best NPR voice.
That was pretty good.
Yeah.
And, maybe we should do, what do they call it, ASMR, where they do just relaxing.
I didn't even know about this. I
was
watching Bill Maher one time, and he talked about this. The first time I ever heard of this thing. Like, so what, people that's like tapping their fingers on like a desk.
Yeah.
What are we doing now? What is this? Like someone talks
I've been
softly. It's like, what in the hell is happening? I don't understand.
I've been watching the new episodes of Beavis and Butthead, and they actually clown on an ASMR video. It's so funny.
Are they doing like a Mystery Science Theater 3000 sort of way?
That's what Beavis and Butthead always was. It always was. That's when it was at its best, when they were ripping on music videos of the era.
Yeah, that's true.
All the other stuff in between's great, but it's when they're doing the MST3K stuff to pop culture things. That's where Beavis
someone
and
needs
Butthead
to.
shine.
The pop culture doesn't gonna mock itself.
I hate what they did to Winger.
Yeah,
but
that's their biggest crime they've ever committed.
Yeah, it's their biggest sin.
Let's take a band that's actually really good and let's aim at them. You know what I mean?
Totally. It's like I wouldn't mind hanging out with Dave Grohl, but I still have a hard time forgiving him for Nirvana.
Yeah, that's true.
I wouldn't mind hanging out with Mark Tremonti, but I have a hard time forgiving him for...
I got to feel Mike Tremonti is a pretty good dude. I bet he'd be actually a lot of fun to hang out with.
He probably, totally.
He probably likes a lot of the same music. He's like our age. He likes a lot of the same stuff that we like, I'm sure.
And he actually became a better player throughout his career.
And
so I know he cares about
music
playing.
Too. Like the Ultra Bridge stuff's got some real playing.
Yeah, the Creed stuff is just hot garbage.
Well, I don't know if I go that far. As I consider the time, like I feel like at least they were playing guitar riffs that had more to it than it wasn't Nirvana or something like that.
Cock-a-doodle-doo. Dude, he wrote the cock-a-doodle-doo lick. That's unforgivable. It's so bad.
All right, I'll just let that go. The cock-a-doodle-doo riff is funny. I'll give you that. So let's get to our topic, which is subjectivity of gear.
Right.
So one thing I want to kind of aim at is, obviously everybody brings their own biases when it comes to things that they think is good.
Although we are 1,000% objective.
That's true.
So.
I mean, what we believe is totally right, but everyone else brings their own subjectivity into their own thing. And then the other thing too is you have to learn how to decipher like the propaganda that the gear manufacturers will throw out there.
Yep.
And it's like there's so many like buzzwords that you got to learn to recognize them as buzzwords. It's really honestly good life advice too. In other fields besides music, you got to be able to recognize buzzwords and when you're being manipulated.
There's a saying in music retail: if the piece of gear says that it's custom, it's not custom.
Yep, exactly.
If the piece of gear says that it's special, it's not special.
Nope, it is not. It's far from special.
Yeah.
But here's what I would say. You've got to find gear in the same, being guitar, pickups, strings, picks, cables, amplifiers, effects that work for you. And that answer is going to be different as it should be.
Yes.
But that being said, there are certain things I would say that you have to sort of be able to read between the lines on. And I would say if you're playing like heavy rock, there's really no substitute for humbucking pickups. You need humbuckers in both bridge and neck position. You're going to need something like a double locking system. You're going to need something like a locking tremolo system of some sort, even if it's not double locking. I
had the Bigsby debate with a coworker recently.
Shouldn't have much of a debate. It kind of debates itself,
Well, it was. So I think when we're talking about subjectivity in gear, that's going to be a little bit different category than, for example, a Bigsby tremolo sucks because of the laws of physics, things like friction and tension and the forces of nature.
Yeah, it actually doesn't even do what it's designed to do well either. So it's
right.
It's
If you care about being in tune, that's not the bridge for
or
you.
having actual ability to bend pitch of notes. You know what I mean? That's
right. So
Yeah.
I don't care how it looks. I don't care about the aesthetic. I
Yeah.
don't care if someone used it in the 50s that
yeah,
I like.
functionality. Yeah.
All I care about is that it changes the pitch of the strings and then is in tune when I'm done using it. That's all I care about. And there are actual physical metrics that you can objectively, right? Like you could put that string under an oscilloscope and you can tell if your A string is 440 hertz.
Yeah.
That's what I mean by objective. It's indisputable.
Yeah, but then things like warm sounding, bright sounding,
Bitey guitars.
Those are all very subjective terms that mean different things to different people. So like, oh, my guitar has got a big warm sound. Like, what does that mean? What is it, that sound? What's happening that gives it a big warm sound?
Yeah, that's a good one.
It's got a bright, snappy sound. Like, okay, what does that mean? You know what I mean? So generally speaking, reading between the lines, if someone says big and warm, they're most likely talking about humbucking pickups on an electric guitar. We're just going to talk about electric solid body guitars. Acoustic guitars will be a different thing if we ever get around to talking about them at all.
Yeah, we can talk about that too. Yeah.
I don't know. I gotta get emotionally ready for that.
Well, I can get into tone woods and all that. I've got the chops for that conversation.
There's actually a mistaken idea that tone woods don't matter on solid body electrics, which couldn't be further from the truth.
Yeah.
But anyway, we're probably talking about something like that's going to have either an alder or a mahogany body. It's going to have some kind of humbucking pickups. When someone says big and warm, rosewood fretboard, maybe mahogany neck, something like that would be big and warm. That's usually what someone's meaning when they say that. When they say bright, they're probably talking about something like a poplar body with single coils, maple
body.
Yeah, maple body, maple top, maple fretboard in the neck. That's kind of what they mean when they say that. Vintage usually means lower output. So that's if you're going to translate it like, okay, I've got vintage pickups, that means lower output. If it's single coil vintage, that means noisy low output.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Punk style usually means something like P90s, which are things that shouldn't exist.
Which is just a really big single coil.
Yeah, I always describe P90s as having all the problems of single coils without having any of the benefits of humbuckers.
That's so funny. So we've got an Ibanez Joe Satriani series signed by Joe in the shop.
Oh, it's an SA. Or sorry, JS.
JS. Yeah. It's a JS series, and I think it's actually one of the Japanese built models. So it's
nice.
So it's a pro guitar, right? It's autographed by Joe, and it's hanging on the wall at the shop, and it's got it looks like an Edge tremolo. It looks like an Edge bridge, but it's a hardtail.
Huh.
It's really weird.
That is weird. What's the point of that exactly?
I have no idea. It's just got two big bolts that are keeping it fixed.
Does it have like fine tuners and stuff? Or?
It's got a locking nut. It has a locking nut,
and
but
fine
it's
tuners, but it's a fixed bridge.
Yeah, locking nut and fine tuners, but it's a fixed bridge. It makes no sense to me.
It doesn't at all. It's like, why not just have the tremolo? It doesn't.
Just have a Les Paul style tailpiece or something.
Yep.
I don't understand it all.
Now another big buzzword that you got to watch out for that's going to be is brown sound. This has got the brown sound, and I tell you that's extremely brown sound. What that usually typically means is a heavily saturated preamp distortion that's kind of darker sounding. That's kind of what the people usually mean by that. And I've never found one that says brown sound that sounds like the brown sound.
Right.
It never has. So you want to try and avoid that if you can. And to get close to a brown sound, you really need to have the gear that Eddie was using back in the day. You need to have something that approaches like a Plexi Marshall, that has some kind of cascading overdrive in the preamp section. You have to crank that sucker, variac it down. There's no other way to get that sound.
And can you tell our audience what a variac does?
Variac is a voltage regulator. It allows you to lower the voltage of an amplifier down so that you can get a fully pushed power section at a lower volume. Yep. It's almost like an external master volume. You can kind of think of it that way. But it really works on the voltage of the amp rather than actually a master volume. And there's a lot of boutique manufacturers who make vintage kind of style plexis, and then you can get a power soak from many different companies that allow you to kind of lower the voltage down.
A power attenuator.
Yeah, exactly. So it's one of those things that you have to kind of do that to get the brown sound. There's not going to be something you can find in a box. There's no brown sound box that you can just go do that. I mean, even the EVH like overdrive pedal is a really cool pedal, but it doesn't sound like the brown sound. It sounds like an EVH 5153 sort of. It's got that kind of distortion.
Right. Well, and they
which
know
is
they're
a good
gonna,
sound. It's just not the brown sound.
And they know they're going to be people are going to buy that and be plugging it into modern amplifiers. Probably a lot of them are going to be solid state model amps,
which is still you do a lot worse than that pedal.
Sure,
it's a good sound. I'm just not saying it's not the brown sound.
It's not a crate.
Yeah, exactly. It's a good workable sound.
It's a good workable sound.
You know what I mean? And then one other thing that I think is subjective too, and it's so funny. I actually have I don't have the kind of cash where I can afford to drop $7,000 on a Bogner. But I did have $100 on me, and I saw a Bogner pedal somewhere, and I got the Bogner Ecstasy Red pedal, which is a great pedal. It actually has got two different. It's almost like a 2-channel amp, really. But here's the problem with it: it's so complex. There's like 50 knobs on it and like 10 switches, and like every time you turn anything,
$100.
It was I've got it. The reason I bought it is it was so cheap. Because it's normally like 300 or something like that.
Okay, that makes more sense.
But anyway, it's got so many switches and knobs on it, and every one of the knobs is like really could mess your sound up big time. So you have to really turn knobs and be very like attuned to what's happening. And there's like modern, and there's hard sound and soft sound and loose sound, and there's like 10 little switches. It's like amazing. And I keep thinking like, there's so many bad sounds on this pedal that you're just going to sit down and take an hour to get a good sound out of this pedal. And then once you have it, you just got to lock it down, and that's the sound. You know what I mean? And
so here's the big question. So, and this is something that I think people should be aware of.
By the way, the pedal is a good pedal. It's just you have to really mess with it to get the sounds right. You know what I mean? It's not like a plug-and-play thing.
So were you putting the pedal in between your guitar and the preamp?
Putting it into the front of the amp, but with a clean, basically no anything in the amp sound. It's basically just treating it as like a pedal platform. So the entirety of the sound is coming from the pedal. There's basically a blank clean sound, and then there's an overdrive and then more overdrive sound. And so you have to like dial your amp in so it's completely flat. Like there's nothing there.
Have you tried like plugging it, just using it as a preamp and going into the return on your effects loop?
I haven't. I'm not a fan of that. I'll be honest with you. I don't feel like I get good results doing that. Especially with an overdrive or distortion, that needs to go in the front end, in my opinion.
I think there's a lot of distortion pedals that, like the Metal Zone, for example. People sometimes have trouble with that. It works better as a preamp. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's really what it is. It's a preamp. It's gain and EQ sculpting and stuff. And
I'll give EVH. I'm sorry, I didn't cut you off.
No, that's okay. No, I just think the way you're describing the Bogner pedal, the first thing I do is run it into on my effects loop.
I think you still run into the same problems though, because all the EQ and the loose, tight switches and stuff. There's like so many things. Like if you change one thing, it affects these other things, and you have to now I got to switch this, and okay, now that changes this thing.
The
again.
Dominoes,
and you have to kind of start flipping switches. There's just so many. I always think, why does a manufacturer do that? Where there's like so many, it's almost like it's a Indiana Jones style cave you have to work your way through. It's like, why not just give me the good sounds like right there, and then I can just tweak them a little bit? Like, why give me all these subjective sounds that I'm going to have to weed my way through like 20 different sounds I can't use to find the good sound I can use? And there's great sounds in that pedal, there definitely are, but you have to really work at it. It's almost like being in the jungle and hacking away with like a machete. And that's what I was going to say. I give EVH overdrive credit because that's a pretty, no-brainer. You plug into it almost at any setting, and it's going to sound good.
Yeah, and all those pedals are basically based on the old MXR stuff, right?
There's some variation on the theme, I'm sure, but it's like, to me, if you're a manufacturer, you need to make it so it's simple. And that being said, I'm not a guitar tweak guy. I'm not going to tweak out my stuff. I want it just to sound good. I don't want to sit there and spend 2 hours tweaking shit.
Yeah, you just totally described why I hate pedals.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't want to twist knobs. I just want to set my EQ right in the middle, and
no joy in strumming an A5 chord while you tweak knobs little by little.
Yeah, totally. I mean? I've never been that guy. I just want to get to the playing music part.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's being said, if you see the marketing for like, oh, it's got all the sounds of the Bogner Ecstasy in a pedal, it's like, okay, that's great. But like that but the thing that shows me is that like you really need to be like an amp tweaking kind of guy to really get the most out of that pedal. You really need to sit down and spend hours just turning knobs and twisting and turning off and on switches and stuff. And I really don't want anything to do with that. As much as I did find some good tones on that pedal.
Oh, I'm sure Bogner's.
I love the Bogner stuff.
Anyway,
it's just one of those things. I just think simplicity needs to be the order of the day. And I think because a lot of the people that they're trying to manufacture these things to sell to are hobbyist musicians who
just want to turn knobs. And
well, anything that not practice.
Yeah, anything to avoid practicing.
Yeah, they want to be able to turn knobs and strum chords, and that's what they want to do.
It's funny. This is bringing up a memory of when I worked music retail. It's only kind of associated, but we had this kid that he would come in with his mandolin and it was had a piezoelectric pickup in it, and he wanted to plug into the pedal board. Yeah. And like anytime I remember him coming in and say, "Hey, can I plug this into the?" And I said, "Nope." Nope.
Tough love there. It's like no.
Yeah, just no.
And then it's just going to be your hand smack. Peasants.
Yeah, but I mean the kid was persistent. So one day I picked it up and he let me plug his mandolin in, and it fed back like a stuck pig. I held it this direction, boo. Yeah. I held the other direction, boo. Yeah. Boo, ooh, ooh, ooh. So look, this is great if you want to play a feedback solo.
Yeah.
But like that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
So I mean, dude, I appreciate wanting to be creative, but just become a really great mandolin player.
Yep. And then don't worry about these other weird sounds that you can maybe get or not get.
Yeah, you're not going to stumble on this revolutionary new sound that's going to change the world by plugging your mandolin into the
Do you think that was that's DS1. What he was going after? Or I want to find something new that.
There's all different kinds of people that walk through the doors of a music store on any given day.
Say.
You never, I know. You never know, man. Yeah, you never know. I'm surprised that in this age of reality TV, I don't know why someone didn't just set up cameras at Skips maybe 20 years ago. And you could easily come up with definitely a half hour, but probably an hour-long episode just by editing down a week of filming.
Oh my God, I would say that something about music stores too that brings out the cuckoo birds. They all want to come hang out there. I don't know what it is. There's like some of the people who are like nuts. They just love hanging around music stores.
Oh, God. So again, to harken back to this new season of Beavis and Butthead, there's an episode where Beavis meets this older guy who looks kind of like Butthead, but he's kind of a square, and he just kind of gloms on to Beavis. Anyway, and he takes him into a music store, and the first thing he does is pick up a guitar and start wanking and playing loudly.
Uh-huh.
And he's like, "Yeah, I wrote a song. It's called Exit Sandman." Oh my God, it's worth a view.
All right, everybody, you got your marching orders now. Got to go hunt down. That's on Paramount Plus, right?
It's on Paramount Plus. I told my buddy, I said, this scene right here, this is real.
Yeah.
This is I promise you this has happened.
Yep.
Mike Judge was
more than to see it.
Yeah, Mike Judge is pretty great about that stuff. Yeah. He really is.
Well, I mean, he's got to make up for destroying Winger. He's got to do whatever penance he can do to make that happen.
I'd highly recommend watching at least season 2 of Tales from the Tour Bus, where it's all based on funk as a genre that really never got its due.
Yeah.
And it's influenced music that came after it, and so he'll do a whole episode on Bootsy Collins, and then Bootsy Collins will sit down for interviews, but the interviews of Bootsy are animated.
Oh, okay.
It's really, really great. The George Clinton episode is fabulous, all of it. There's Rick James part 1 and part 2. Of course, there's a James Brown episode, Prince, all of it.
That's awesome.
So good. So anyway, I digress.
Yeah, I mean, getting back to the music subjectivity thing. So I think things like warm, big, brown sound, metal, classic, these are all terms you got to kind of watch out for. And I think that you have to be conscious that this means different things to different people. So when someone says metal, that's going to conjure. One person might think, okay, that means Obituary. One person might think that means Poison. One person might think that means Iron Maiden. So metal tone is not a metal tone. Things like glassy single coil sounds. That means different things to different people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you can actually kind of, I think, filter the quality of gear based on how it presents its functions. So, for example, if it's the such and such super duper metal pedal, and if there's a knob on it that says, like, I'll turn the destruction knob to, that's not a serious piece of gear.
No. If it says suck knob, that'd be more accurate, actually.
I think the DoD grunge pedal did have a suck knob.
It did, and then that made sense. That actually was just a fourth wall breaking kind of thing.
It really was. It was like, we're letting you in on the
pedal,
joke.
You suck. Yeah,
right.
That's what it comes down to.
Oh, I remember the DoD gonkulator.
Yeah. Well, you know
God,
what's
it's
funny
so
though? I
bad.
feel like we've gotten into this world now too, where there's like very esoteric effects that are kind of based on loosely the whammy pedal type thing, where you have like it's a chime effect or it's like this weird like dehumanizer effect. It's like
Ring modulator is what it's called.
There's a bunch
And
more
weird harmonizers,
that are
yeah.
getting these weird things that are not. Maybe I'm just not creative enough, but I don't see musical applications. They're just bizarre, like
I think Tom Morello.
affectations, you know?
I think Tom Morello has used the whammy pedal, which for the audience, it's a pitch shifter.
Yeah, it's in the pedal form. So you push the pedal down, the treadle, and the shift goes up or down two octaves. I think
Yeah,
is what
it's an expression pedal,
Yeah.
like a wah pedal or
With octave
yeah, it's
and
not on
pitch.
or off.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You could do
so-
some really interesting things with like sliding chords with that pedal too, which is actually kind of neat. But
Vernon Reid has done some cool stuff.
yeah,
With talk about underrated guitar players. I don't know how that didn't make it into a previous episode.
that
but-
pedal though actually is one of the last effects gearboxes that actually did something totally different than anything
Yep.
before it, and that really hasn't been much since. Everything else has just been variations on themes.
Yep.
Like I always think, I feel so bad when I go to the NAMM show and I go down to the downstairs of the building and I see all these boutique mom and pop pedal builders. And I'm thinking, guys, I hope you do well, but the world
Yeah.
does not need another overdrive
No,
pedal.
not
We
at
don't
all.
need
or
another
flanger
flexi
or
inspired
phaser. Yep.
overdrive pedal. It's like there's too many as it is. We don't need a new phaser. We don't need a flanger. This phaser though is based off the Phase 90. I'm like, yeah, every other phaser is based off.
So
the
then
Phase
just get a
90.
Phase 90.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't make sense.
It's
why.
not that important. Just get
Yeah.
a Phase 90
Yeah.
and you have a phaser.
Oh, I need a flanger. It's like the old MXR. Well, yeah, they have that though.
Yeah, there
it's-
is one of those.
Yeah.
I think the last time an effect came out that I remember being different, and I think the whammy pedal predates. I remember being at the NAMM show in 1996, and the Lexicon Jam Man was the big deal.
Was that the loop pedal or something?
It was a rack. It was a one space rack mount looper,
Yeah, yeah.
and it was like the very first of its kind.
Do you think that really counts as an effects though pedal? I mean,
That's a good question. I think if you're David Torn, then you could argue.
what if you're Rip Torn? Would that also work for you?
If you're Rip Torn, yeah, I don't know.
Maybe that's the comedy gold.
If
missing
you're
in his
Rip
act.
Torn, it's just fabulous.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, that's the last time I can think of a thing that I guess that eventually became a pedal.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
those are ubiquitous now. The
Yep.
loop pedals are everywhere now.
I remember it was a big deal when Rocktron came out with the talk box that you didn't have to plug in between your amp head and your cabinet.
Mm-hmm.
It was called a Banshee. That was a pretty big deal because when you're using a talk box, like think Bon
the tubes
Jovi
and stuff, and yeah.
the wow,
Yeah.
right? Living on a Prayer. The Living on a Prayer.
Peter Frampton.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. Wah, 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 wah.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
And so the issue with that is that if you're using a tube head and it's going in between your head and your cabinet, if there's any kind of issue with the load that's being put on the head, you can blow up your amp.
Yeah. But maybe that was the part of the show, though. Maybe that's why they did it.
Could be.
Went through, I think, like 6,000 amps on that Bon Jovi.
Yeah, that's
Every half of
right.
it. All right, when's Living on a Prayer come in? Okay,
Yeah.
we're going to have to blow this amp up here.
The guys at Marshall sure
Yeah.
regretted that endorsement.
It's like a variation on the movie The Prestige. There's like
I love that movie.
there's like a whole bunch of like broken Marshall heads under the stage after this show.
You know what? If you want to watch a movie that is a great analogy to what it's like to being a working artist, I think that movie is really pretty great. Sort of, I know, sort of a side thing, but the Prestige, the guys are magicians,
Yeah.
and the great lengths they go to
It's like one up it and stuff.
to one up it and to practice the commitment to their craft.
Yep.
It goes to, without spoiling the plot, it goes to extreme lengths.
Yeah.
I think that is a
I'm pretty
great
sure one
analogy.
of them develops adamantium claws, and the other one becomes Batman. I'm pretty sure that's how that movie ends, right?
Yeah, that's right. And they hang out with David Bowie.
Yeah, and I think Black Widow's there too, right? Just somehow she's.
Oh
like there.
yeah, that's right. I
Yeah.
forgot about Scarlett Johansson in that film. So everybody out there, go watch The Prestige and then reflect on how hard you're working at being an artist.
That's true.
You know, it's not hard enough.
Thank you for listening to the Rock Guitar Confidential podcast with Brian and Scott. Please make sure to rate and subscribe to this podcast. Now back to the show. What's funny is I was going to mention too is that when it comes to like everyone's idea about what a good tone is so colored by their perspective. Like to me and you, I'm guessing like our tone idea of a good tone is a super strat, high output on humbuckers, going into some kind of loud, heavily distorted amp rig, like something equivalent to like a Marshall GACM 2000 or
Yep.
Soldano SLO.
Yep.
That is what great tone is to us, with maybe like a phaser in between or something, some kind of like some color, whatever spices you want to color it with.
I'll let you have the phaser.
You know, I mean, that's like the delay or something. Just throw something in there to spice it up a little bit, but that's like to us what a great tone is.
Yeah, I just want, and I was taught I just want every note to pop.
Yeah, that's true. And then I think you can do both. I think it's like, okay, there's a good meal, and you have to add the right spices to that meal to make it work the way you want. And that could be just salt and pepper, and that works all you want, or it could just be you want to add 15 different things to it.
Push it real
Salt
good.
and pepper. Well, but I was going to go with that though, is that like if you grew up in a different era, like say you were a child of the early 60s, you probably would really love like Vox AC30s with like an Epiphone like ES335 style guitar, or maybe you want a Plexi with a Telecaster or a Strat. That might be what the great tone is to you.
Yeah, or if you're Brian May, you and your dad are geniuses, and you build your own guitar from scratch.
Exactly, and then use the AC30 in ways that no one else thought of using them
Yeah.
before. But I guess the point I'm trying to make, if you grew up in the 90s, then maybe you think like a Jaguar into like a Fender Twin with a grunge pedal in front of it is the greatest tone ever, and that,
Or a Jaguar plugged into a transistor radio.
Yeah,
that
it's
would be
true.
kind of more the grunge thing.
I guess what I'm trying to say is that it's so subjective. Like what speaks to you in terms of what makes you excited about being a guitar player, and like we can only speak from our own perspective. I think being self-aware enough to recognize that our perspective is going to be colored by where we came from.
What?
Yeah.
Where's Scott? Who are you? What's going on?
I'm not
here?
saying we're not right.
What's happening?
And
I don't
every
know
fiber
what-
of my bone thinks
Yeah,
we're right. But I'm
yeah.
also self-aware enough to recognize that that's not
Okay.
because I'm completely objective. I'm definitely not completely objective on this because I do know what is a tone I think is great.
Yeah.
So things like fast playing neck. What does that mean? Like
That is interesting.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I would just say just one last bit about tone. It should inspire you to play.
Yep. Or unless you're playing grunge, then it should inspire you to just put away the guitar forever. And
You should be inspired to
yeah,
quit.
exactly. And make sure no one else plays grunge too. You need to go. Your vocation from that point forward is to go forward and make sure spread the gospel of not playing.
Yes, right.
Whoever
yes,
has
totally.
thought of doing a grunge or pop punk band,
Hey,
you
you
need to
know
make sure
what?
that doesn't happen.
Hey,
Yeah.
Dungeons and Dragons is making a comeback. That would be a good thing to do instead.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Maybe that, or start Twitch account and start like playing video games online or something. Anything else, just anything to keep you busy. Fantasy football leagues, join like 10 of them. You
Yes,
know what I
just
mean?
don't enable the next Eddie
Yeah,
Vedder, please.
Don't let grunge happen again. You know
Don't.
what I mean?
Yes, friends don't let friends
Exactly.
grunge.
Like never again. Never
Again. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So yes, let's talk about guitar necks.
Yes. Well, guitar
Yes.
necks. I mean, what's thrown around a lot is comfortable neck. Like this neck is comfortable. Like why would you make a neck that isn't comfortable? Like, and comfortable to who? That's the question that comes to my mind. Because if I play a 1950s Les Paul style neck, it doesn't feel comfortable to me. I'm sure it feels comfortable to somebody, but not me.
Yeah, I
You know?
remember my first USA made electric guitar was a Washburn N4.
Yeah.
Yeah. The one that I bought for my buddy who was the touring guitar player for
Engelbert Humperdinck.
Engelbert Humperdinck. It's just I just wanted to say Engelbert Humperdinck.
Yes, I love that there's a person who was named Engelbert Humperdinck.
I think he made that name up.
I hope he did.
I think that's a stage
If
name.
not,
yeah.
then please tell me he went immediately after being born and went to get his name changed. To
Got to give him credit. It's unforgettable and it's fun to say.
like Blade
I wanna say
Steel
it.
should have been
Yeah.
his name after
Mike Bleed, or the WWE wrestler we invented. Yeah, so that is, I thought, cool, two buckers, a Floyd. It's got that cool Stevens extended cutaway where it's a bolt on.
Yeah, it's a cool guitar.
But the
I had
bolts
the
are all in a
M2
row.
version of that guitar, so
Yes.
I didn't have the Stevens cutaway, but it was very, very much the same guitar. Other than that,
Yeah, cool guitar. Very, very nice piece of ash, which is a tree that, we're getting to where we can't cut those down anymore.
those are the ones that fight the evil dead, right? Those
Yes,
trees.
they do.
Yeah.
That they fight. It fought. I killed. I don't know how many deadites with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was,
Ash versus the Evil Dead.
yes,
That's a good thing.
That is a good thing.
It is.
So but it's got a baseball bat of a neck. Let me tell you.
More so than you would think.
Way
For
more
a
so
guitar
than you
player
would
as
think.
technical as Newman Betancourt. You would think it would be a faster playing. You know what's another guitar like that is the Phil Collin PC1 Jackson.
That's right.
I remember looking at that guitar and thinking that guitar looks awesome. I got to play it. And I pick it up. I'm like, what is with this neck? This
Yeah.
neck feels like did you just take a baseball bat and cut it in half and that's all it is? It was as comfortable as that.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe how long to do anything was a chore on that guitar. I just can't believe why would someone do this? You know what I
Yep.
mean? It's unbelievable. And You know, it's funny. That's my perspective. I think that for somebody else, I have relatively small hands too, so I think that probably is part of it. So it's one of those things that I don't like guitars that I have to fight. I want a guitar that plays really nice. Like the extreme opposite of that is the Music Man EVH guitar.
Oh yeah,
where the neck is so petite. I remember playing that thing and feeling like, is this like a normal size guitar? The neck feels really tiny in my hands.
Yeah,
I remember feeling that, and then. Eventually, I think you and I probably both did this. So we found our way to, I think Jackson Soloists were like the next one, and the neck throughs, and then I found my way to an Ibanez RG with the Wizard neck.
Yeah, I got an Ibanez. I have a 1996 or 97 USA Dinky Elite.
I have an RG 520 that you actually sold me back in the day, back in the 90s.
Yay.
Which is so funny.
So it's a good one.
With a Wizard neck, Japanese made.
Yeah.
Because I remember at that time, my main guitar was an RG 3120 Prestige. And
I remember when you bought that.
Yeah, I think you sold me that guitar too.
That was the very first. Yeah. That was the very first Prestige.
Yep, and I remember I loved that guitar. I used it forever. I actually recorded my first album with that.
Yeah. So what'd you do with it?
Well, I'll tell you. I used to have. Let me tell the story of the 520 and then come back to that.
Wow, a little drama on the Scott and Ryan podcast.
When I would play shows with Scott Allen Project, I had the N2 was my backup guitar. And I remember when I had to break a string or something, I had to go to the N2. It was a 22 fret instead of 24 fret, and the neck was very different. So it took me like a half a song to kind of adjust to the new neck. It would actually mess me up. Like I didn't feel comfortable playing it. So I needed a backup guitar that was virtually identical to my main guitar, but I didn't want to spend the money for the Prestige. So I went and got a 520. I think I bought it for like $700 or something.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, and it was really nice. It had the quilted Pele top and mahogany. It basically, in every other way, it was just like my Prestige. It just wasn't as nice, if that makes sense.
Not as ornate.
And I still have that guitar. That guitar I actually still have. My 3120, when I got my endorsement with VGA Guitars and I couldn't play those guitars live anymore, I actually gave it to my webmaster at ScottAllenProject.com as a gift.
That's so nice.
So he now has, and I remember him, he was so sweet. Because he was actually a former bandmate of mine too. A long story with that. Eric was my student of mine, and then he and I played in the band called Lush. Actually, our band was called The Morning After. And then we played together for like 2 years in that band, and then we've been friends ever since. And he helped me set up my first website with the Scott Allen Project, and as a thank you for being my webmaster, because I used to have to send him emails and say like, "Hey man, post this thing for this show, post this thing," and he would do it for free. So I ended up giving him that guitar. And I remember he wrote me a sweet text saying like, "Hey, this is like the greatest thing anyone's ever given me except for life and education."
Aww,
I was
nice.
like, "That's so sweet." And that was a great guitar. And for many years, I thought that Wizard neck on that RG was like the nicest playing guitar I'd ever seen. It's like a 17-inch radius, very flat, thin. The one thing that Ibanez does right is the heel joint on the bolt-on.
Oh yeah,
they just, it's so smooth up there and stuff. And so, but when I found the VGAs, it was a whole nother level of comfort. Those things are just. I remember playing it and just being blown away that this is better than my Ibanez. I can't believe how smooth this is to play.
The VGA neck is a little bit rounder, isn't it?
It's more like a V, I would say, than like a shallow D, which is kind of what the RG is, if that makes sense. And it's funny, actually, I just had that experience just recently, too, is I've been playing a lot with my Super 7 for recording for our project, and also I've had a bunch of students who, for some reason...
That would be X-Aegis project.
Album dropping this fall.
Yep.
But I had a bunch of students who have started picking up 7-string, so I've been teaching a lot with my 7-string, and what I've been doing is going back and forth between my 7-string, and then every once in a while I'll teach with my Charvel, and I'm shocked. The playability is so much better on the VGA. It's like unbelievable. Yeah. Like I've noticeably like, wow, this is not even close to as easy to play as the other guitar. So I think that's a very subjective thing. So for me, I like a flatter radius. Although that one's slightly round. I think it's the 12, 13-inch radius.
Yeah, the radius meaning the curvature of the frets.
And I want the neck to be like either a shallow D or like a shallow D verging on a V, depending on what part of the fretboard you're in. And I want it to be very, very like out of the way, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think that's the key to the whole thing. What do you think?
Well, I own 4 RGs.
All Wizard necks?
Yeah. Well, 3 of them are Prestige, and then I've got a 7-string from a lower import series, just because I have to have one. Mm-hmm. You can see it's hanging on the wall there with the same pack of strings in it that I put in there 2 years ago.
Because clearly you play it all the time, is what you're saying.
All the time, so it's there for whenever I may need it. But I love those guitars for solos, and I teach with one a bunch. I also have a couple of Kiesels.
Yeah, those are great, man.
Yeah, they're killer, man. Yeah. And the Kiesel necks, like if I were doing a 3-hour gig, I've got one that's more of a narrow width and the other that's a little bit more of a wide width. Mm-hmm. They're both kind of shallow C's.
Okay.
Like the wider width shallow C is the one that I'm gonna want to play 3 hours on.
Yeah, just more comfortable in your hand.
Yeah, I've like the wizard necks. If I had to play nonstop for 3 hours, that can make my fretting hand a little tired. Like
It's the flatness of the radius. Is that why?
The radius is fine. It's just the thinness everywhere.
Oh, I get you. Yeah.
You know, so like if you're chording a lot, and again, I'm talking 40 songs a night, 50 songs a night. Then yeah, dude, there's this one Kiesel that I bought as actually a backup for my other one. One was a custom order where I told him I want this, I want this, I want this. The other, my girlfriend dragged me down to a Suffering down in Southern California.
A Suffering?
Yeah, it was her friend's wedding.
Oh, okay.
I really hate weddings.
Okay. Is it the happiness that you upset about? What is that?
Oh man, we could do a whole episode on why I hate weddings.
Okay, I gotta get to the bottom of this one, but that's not today. Today we don't have enough time.
Yes, that should be like an attachment to our next working musician.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really hate weddings.
All right, probably an anti-DJ thing, I'm gonna guess, or
I mean, that's just one component.
Okay.
There's it would
Many
be
layers.
easier for us to list the things that I don't hate about weddings.
all right.
So yeah, my buddy Doug had the best wedding ever.
Which was what?
He eloped and didn't invite anybody, so that was the best. It was awesome. So anyway, so while we were down in Southern California for her friend's Suffering, since we were down there, I was able to negotiate a day to head by the Kiesel plant factory, their factory showroom. And I got to give it up to those guys. I found the guitar on the wall. It had all the features I wanted on it. It was from the same series, meaning it was the same body shape, same configuration, super stretch. It's called a DC 600.
Okay.
And I just picked it up off the wall, took it from my right hand to my left hand, handed it to the dude, and said, "I'll take it."
Yep, that's the one.
I didn't play it, not once. I just knew it was going to be awesome. And lo and behold, it is, and it's a neck through with a maple top. I don't even know what the body's made out of. It's probably alder. It's pretty heavy. It could be solid maple. I don't know.
I'd be surprised because solid maple is not too common for body woods. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I've got a USA Kramer Beretta reissue, a USA made Kramer Beretta reissue. That is a maple body.
That's interesting. Wow.
And it's not a lightweight guitar.
Yeah, maple's heavy for sure.
Yeah, so
not heavy like heavy, but it's like heavy like literally
physically heavy. Like it probably weighs like 15 pounds.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, so that Kiesel is that turned out to be my real workhorse guitar. In fact, the only reason I've got it on the wall right now and it's not in major circulation is that the screws on the direct mount humbucker on the bass side are starting to work their way out. So
that sounds like fun.
So if I'm on, like a 12, 13, 15 student day, by the end of the day, the pickup is popping up and bumping into the low E string.
Yeah, and it's no fun.
And that's where our picking hand goes. So, but whatever. I mean, it took so much use before I had one mechanical issue with it. That's just like a regular wear and tear thing. So
I think one thing that I would say about the subjectivity of tone is you've got to sort of play enough to. It almost reminds me of like anything else in life. You just got to get enough experience to be able to understand when you're being played and when you're not. When someone's like describing things to you, like, "Oh, this is a fast playing, warm sounding guitar." It's like, okay, well, what these read between the lines? What does that mean? And what does that mean to me? And you'll have to know, like, when someone's, when I hear someone like a Gibson saying with extremely fast playing neck, I'm like, really? That would be the first time Gibson's ever had that.
Yeah, I mean, does that mean you're going to guarantee that even on your Indonesian-made stuff that all the frets are nice and even?
Yeah, of course not.
Because that's the problem, man. Those guitars that come from places that aren't the United States, Japan, or Canada, I guarantee you're going to find them with high frets. The fretwork just isn't going to be as good.
You have to know walking in the door that you're in for that. And then be up for, okay, I've got a luthier who's a buddy of mine who's going to come in here and is going to get this right. I'm going to pay an extra $200 on top of what I already paid just to get this kind of really squared. You know what I mean? And you kind of just know you're getting... Because there's a lot of those guitars, the bones of the guitars, especially the Mexican stuff that I've seen, Mexican-made stuff, is pretty good. The bones are there.
Oh, sure. You know I mean? All the woods for the Charvel stuff, it's all milled in the Fender
too.
Plant in America. Same with EVH. Yeah. It's just it's the wiring inside.
And then a lot of the Korean-made Japanese or Korean-made Ibanez stuff I actually have had decent luck with. I've actually played a few Ibanez's made in Korea that were pretty solid guitars. The biggest thing I found is the electronics are very wanting. The electronics are very... You have to... I'm going to change the pickups. Just you have to do that.
Nickel alloy bridges.
Yeah, exactly. But you have to... you're going to there's a direct relationship between how much you pay and what you get.
Right.
You know what I mean? So if you want a guitar with an awesome bridge and great electronics, you realize you're going to have to pay the money for it. It's just how it is. If you want an amplifier that does a lot of different tones and has really rich sounding like depth to the tone, you have to pay money for that. It's not going to be the Black Star modeling app's not going to have everything in tons.
Right.
That's like a real like service level version of these tones, and then when you get the real thing, it's going to be deeper. Or well, you get like a nice Neural DSP like plug-in that's going to
Love
be
the Neural
deeper.
DSP plugins.
But I'm just saying, like, you know what I mean? Like, you have to understand that you get what you pay for. There's not anything perfect. When people say, "Oh, it plays just like our $1,500 guitars," you've got to. It's just like anything else that's being scammed on you. You know what I mean?
So here's a, and I might have a controversial opinion on this topic.
Oh, good controversy is good.
Yeah, totally. I know.
Rattle the
I
cage,
harbor.
man.
Just know that if I proffer an unpopular opinion, that's just more evidence that I'm right. It means I've really thought about it.
All right, fair enough.
I have no incentive to put forth an unpopular opinion or a controversial opinion. So here it goes.
Yep, I'm gonna rattle some cages right now.
Yep, that's right. Do you think that the fretboard material affects the tone?
To a small degree.
Yeah, not the feel, the tone.
Yes, because mahogany versus, let's say, rosewood versus Palfaro versus maple versus ebony are going to all have slightly different tonal characteristics. The problem there is going to be the mass. Is there enough mass on that fingerboard to actually really greatly enough affect the tone that you're going to notice it? You know what I mean? And I would say to a very small degree it does.
To the point where it just about doesn't matter.
It does to a small degree. I think you can tell
Like,
around the edges.
Very small.
Yeah.
Like we need to find like a unit of measurement to where we can describe how small.
Yes. I mean, there's many more
Very
factors.
close to zero. All the other factors I think play a much greater, like what the body's made of.
It's all about mass. Like, what's the highest
Yeah.
mass? Whatever that mass of that body wood is going to be the main tone. That and the neck. Those are the two things combined that are going to give you your tone.
Yeah.
And then you have, if there's a maple cap, that's going to contribute a bit. The fretboard's going to contribute a bit. But it's almost like...
I think the fretboard is much more a feel thing.
I agree with that, but I would say it's also like a presence knob on your amp. Like, you have to realize your tone, and then you can just kind of tweak this little knob that's just like a little fine-tuning thing that's going to be the difference. You know what I mean? That's my opinion on it, because I can hear the difference. I can hear the difference between maple and rosewood. That's because I know my guitars, though, too. Like, I play a guitar that's all maple. I know the difference between that and the maple and rosewood thing.
Yeah, I just don't attribute the tone part to the fretboard part. All the other stuff, definitely.
To a small degree. It's not like a massive thing, but it's like just right on the edges a little bit. You know what I mean? You can kind of hear it. Also, one other thing we should probably mention, speaking of fretboards, is nickel versus stainless steel frets.
Oh, yeah.
There's this big myth out there that stainless steel's frets sound harsh or you can't get a good tone with them, and like that's nonsense.
That's absurd. Somehow I didn't realize it, but when I bought that Kiesel that I'm talking about, that's the workhorse. It was supposed to be my backup, but it became number one.
Mm-hmm.
It's got stainless steel frets on it, and I love it.
Yeah, I've got all my VGAs got stainless steel frets, and I just why would you not have stainless steel? It doesn't make sense to me. Like, do people like shaving their frets down to nothing? Do people like? I mean, yes, you're going to go through strings more.
Yeah, but, I've got 4 or 5. Well, but if you're changing your strings as often as you should, it shouldn't matter.
It shouldn't matter. No, exactly. But it's just nonsense. I mean, people are guitar players. We're so darn traditional. Like, we just like, it's got to be what my. I mean, I'm going to get a little meta here. Like, we're kind of the same way. Like, I really need to have a super strat into a high-powered, high-gain amp. That's going to...
And admittedly, some of that's because, I do remember being a kid looking through the Sears catalog and thinking they looked cool.
Yeah.
Or going through Guitar World thinking they looked cool. So those things are true. However, the other reasons I love Super Strats is, again, we've talked a lot about the locking bridge system.
Yeah.
It's because it does its job better
it's
than the alternative.
It's a better tool. Exactly.
It's a better tool. And at the end of the day, that's what I care about. Same with stainless steel frets.
Yep.
It's a better tool.
Yep. Exactly.
And
Same
that's
reason
all
I
that
like
matters.
having air conditioning in the summer. I don't want to go back to like, oh man, remember the days we lived in a cabin out in the woods.
Hey, remember when we used to have that ice box on the old station wagon and we'd
great?
fill it with ice?
Remember
Oh, that was great. The
dying
50s.
of dysentery because there was no sanitation. That was good times. It's like I kind of look back and I think like, well, once we find a better way to do things, we should probably stick to that better way.
I miss my Model T. I used to love cranking it up in the morning.
So much fun going by Zeppelin, isn't it? More fun.
Yeah, I miss rocketing to work at speeds up to 25 miles an hour.
exactly. So
Yeah.
upwards of 25.
Yeah.
My-
Wow.
my-
You must have had a Model A.
My old timey bicycle with the giant wheel and
with the
small
giant wheel
wheel
up front. Yeah, I don't know why.
Those
they-
are so much better. You know?
God, yeah, than those bicycles that have gears and stuff.
Yeah, I think
and-
that one thing I would say about the 80s is it wasn't just about flashy looks, it was about performance. Everything from
Yep.
amps to the way guitars were built were about performance because you're really pushing the guitar to its limit.
yeah, exploring, pushing the guitar
Yeah.
to its limits.
Yeah,
and
and
not- yeah.
I think the vintage stuff was not designed to be pushed to its limit. It was sort of a tool for a certain job where they didn't really consider that. You know, as far as like how fast can you push this? You know, like if you look at the Les Paul and look how the cutaway works, of course they weren't thinking about performance. You know what I mean? It's
Well, they were in 1952.
I guess maybe they hadn't had that imagination that could go to the place where it was going to happen.
I mean, there has to be an
Yeah.
evolutionary step.
Yep.
So yeah, but
I don't know. It's not. I look at that and I think it's weird that people fetishize like the old timey stuff. It's like well, there's a better tool that does the job better and can do more things. We should probably use that.
I read
Yeah.
something somewhere that suggested that when all the boomers are finally gone, the vintage guitar market will collapse.
Oh, you're 100% right. Yeah, it's totally true. And then we shall inherit the earth with our Kramer Pacers and
It's already happening. We have a lot of Kramers on the wall at Skips. Did I send you a picture of the Night Swan that's on the
you
wall?
haven't? No, I got to check it
Oh,
out.
it's the polka dot Night Swan.
Love it, man. Nice ones are awesome.
Yeah, I took a picture of it.
I told you like back
was
when
supposed to send it to you.
when I was in music school in the 90s, you'd walk into a music store in Hollywood and there'd be all these Kramers and Ibanez's and stuff, and it was just like so cool. And it was like an oasis. You walk in there, and the 90s don't live here.
Yeah,
This is a place where the 80s still live. You know what I mean?
So
It's
great.
so cool. I mean, again, that's our own perspective on what was cool and what wasn't cool. But I think we all know it was way cooler. Rock and roll was way cooler in the 80s than the 90s.
Well, and what was cool about it is that it was looking forward.
Yeah.
It wasn't looking backward.
And it was having a good damn time too. It was
Damn
like
straight.
It was like let's do things well and have fun doing it. You know what I mean? It's
yeah,
like,
let's celebrate being good at stuff.
Yeah, exactly, and having fun.
Yeah.
and enjoying that rock and roll is awesome. You know what I mean? And I don't know. There's like this self hatred in the 90s. We can.
Well, and we should revisit that after you have completed watching the Randy Rhoads documentary.
yes, I've only just started it, and I've
You've
like,
only just begun.
there's the funny thing is that both Brian and I are huge fans of Randy Rhoads, and I love Randy. He's one of my all-time favorite guitar players. Eddie is my number one, and that's I'm sure a lot of people share that. But I don't see any kind of competition. There seems like there's this idea that there's a competition between Eddie and Randy, and I think that you can love chocolate and peanut butter. They're both great.
I think that there was maybe a little competition between Randy and Eddie personally.
Maybe, but
Well,
Eddie
professionally anyway.
had so much more success so much earlier than Randy.
Yeah.
I mean, he had already been massively famous before Randy even got the gig with Ozzy. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
and was in Guitar Player magazine, so he was like the guy.
Yeah, I'll just say that I already loved Randy, but after watching the documentary, I love Randy even more.
Of course, I mean it's such a cool thing to celebrate because it's strange. As famous as Randy Rhoads is, and as much as he still finds his way in the Guitar magazine covers and stuff like that, he's still a relatively underground figure. Like if you talk to people, walk down the street to talk to 10 people. Like maybe one in 100 would have heard of Randy Rhoads, which
Yeah.
is really strange to me considering that everybody in the world has heard Crazy Train nonstop for 40 years.
At sporting events
Yeah.
and everywhere, yeah.
But I feel so much joy when I see some like 6-year-old kid bust out the Crazy Train riff, and I'm just thinking, dude, Randy made this thing back in like 1981.
Dude. I remember there was an
and-
episode of The Office where they're doing another lunchroom meeting, and Kevin, the accountant guy, turns on Crazy Train and then jogs around the room a couple of times
It's so cool
until he's out of breath and just about has a heart attack. But I just thought that is fantastic.
Yeah, it is, and it shows you the reach that Randy had. You know what I mean? And the fact that he only made really 2 records
Yep.
with Ozzy, and then they had the live album they kind of put together after the fact.
Yep.
That's his entire output that everyone's heard.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then we're still talking about him. 30-something years later? What was it, 82 he died? So 40 years, literally 40 years later.
Well, let's see here. So March 20th, 1982 would have been the gig he would have played. I think he died on the 18th.
Yeah, you're right.
So-
So I should point. Ryan has in the recording studio here. He's got a poster that says "Rock Super Bowl
14.
14." Ozzy Osbourne with Randy Rhoads. It's actually a poster that's promoting the show that would have been the next show Randy would have played after if he had not died. So it's pretty
Yeah,
crazy. So
that is pretty. It's a crazy train of a poster, man.
to me
It's,
though, like when it
yeah.
comes to like great guitar players, man, you don't have to choose Eddie and Randy or
Oh,
Hendrix
no,
and
not at
Eddie.
all.
It's like they're all great. We're all better off for having had them.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And I think that the guitar world's a better place for that. I mean, Randy is like a god in a whole different way than Eddie is. I think Eddie was kind of like a good sort of like ambassador to people for guitardom. Like, look at this cool dude. He's
Yeah.
amazing. He's
He
doing
definitely
all this.
transcended genre.
Yep, but he reached everybody, and I
Yep.
think Randy is like the sort of godfather of that sort of more cerebral kind
Thoughtful.
of classical metal kind of thing, and kind of that Yngwie kind of picked up later on and kind of took in a different direction. Whereas Eddie was more like, I would say, more mainstream. I would say
Yep.
his approach.
Oh,
and
agreed.
That kind of thing. And
Eddie never had to face the satanic panic
yeah, that's true.
the way that Randy did.
Well, because he's thinking about partying and chicks and driving
Right.
cars,
Beautiful
and stuff,
girls and
yeah,
stuff,
exactly.
yeah.
It wasn't like he was singing about
Panama.
I got to tell you though, one thing that drives me crazy about Ozzy, and this has nothing to do with Randy, but it's like the self-reverential stuff, like no one understands me. I'm gonna be a rock and roll rebel. It's like I'm like dude, just like sing. Like, can we not be like the fourth wall breaking here? I don't want to hear about
like Miracle Man was a great one.
Yeah, but he was singing
criticizing
about
the televangelists.
But it wasn't so
and-
much like about how him being like, I'm just a rebel and no one understands me kind of thing.
Okay, so rock and roll. I miss the era of, okay, like you're a teenager and the one thing in the world you want to do
Is rock.
is rock,
Yeah.
and your parents, the man,
Yeah, are trying to
your
stop you from
teachers,
rocking.
everyone's trying to stop you from rocking.
Yep.
So when Ozzy sings he's a rock and roll rebel, I'm thinking, hell yeah, me too.
It's like Judas Priest when they're robbing that bank with their guitars in the Breaking the Law video.
Yeah.
They break through the wall and they're just playing the guitar.
Oh, or when, or
the
yeah.
guard's like, "Oh my God, they've got electric guitars. What do we do?"
Or in the Rainbow in the Dark video,
Yeah.
when the dude's stalking the woman and she goes into the adult bookstore and goes up the staircase.
Yeah.
He follows her up there, but then Vivian Campbell Dane rock him all the way down the staircase and then back into the street. Like he gets rocked.
Yeah, it's true. And like,
Or when Scorpions pull into the small town in Leaving You,
Uh-huh.
and they go into the tour bus stops and they all check into the hotel, and all of the men's wives who were playing softball, they follow the rock band into the hotel,
Mm-hmm.
and the husbands get pissed because their wives are hanging out with Scorpions.
Yeah.
Right? And so as the men with their pitchforks and shotguns run into the hotel, the Scorpions think fast, go down into the basement, and you know what they do?
they rock.
They rock.
Yeah, exactly.
They're like, what should we do? Let's start rocking to solve this problem.
Yep. Well,
I miss that.
as Paul Stanley taught us, that God gave rock and roll to us. It's true.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, gave rock and roll to
And
everyone.
you and you.
Yeah, it's
That's
true.
right, man.
And that's a good place to end our podcast.
It
on.
is. So, yeah, I think fretboards, that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Yep.
So I think it's more of a feel thing.
Okay, so it comes down to it when it comes to gear, is everything's subjective. You just have to play enough different kinds of things to figure out what you like, and then ignore the noise when people are trying to talk you into buying other stuff that isn't what you like, and learn the buzzwords to watch out for. And run away
Everything's
from.
subjective except for being in tune.
That's
That
true.
is actually measurable. That's why Bigsby.
And whatever
tremolos
you and
suck.
I work at, use is is objectively the best stuff. I
Of
think
course.
that's something that everyone needs to just acknowledge and be okay with.
And what's most important to realize is that guitar is objectively, it's scientifically proven to be the greatest musical instrument ever invented. So never forget that.
No one can argue that at all.
Nope.
So, all right. Thank you so much for listening to the Rock Guitar Confidential podcast with Ryan and Scott. We'll have our socials up shortly. Please be sure to rate and subscribe to this podcast. Rating 5 stars only, I think we've decided is the
Yeah, I think we just upped our star rate to 5
so
minimum.
Just that's what you're putting. Then
That's right.
If you don't like this podcast, then all you got to do is just put a 5-star rating and then just don't say anything.
That's right. But if you're listening to this podcast, it indicates you have very, very good taste.
That's true.
So I think we're already going to be good.
All right, thank you so much for listening to us. Be well.